rather doleful tone in Suella Braverman's speech there, wasn't there? But the apology, again, I'm sorry. Rishi Sunak said it very early on in his speech in Downing Street this morning as well. Tim Bale joins me, Professor of Politics at Queen Mary University of London and author of the book The Conservative Party After Brexit, Turmoil and Transformation. Is it time for another chapter, Tim, or another book?
It is time for another chapter. I'm writing the paperback, well, not as we speak, because I'm on College Green, but I soon will be.
Okay, literally another chapter. Well, I look forward to it. Well, let's have a preview of it now, shall we? Well, I mean, that is basically the decision the party. It has to make a number of key decisions, but in terms of the direction of travel, centre right or right, I guess.
Yes, I think that is the basic choice, but it will be determined by who they select as leader. And of course, the first thing they will do is go into a leadership contest, which is normally not the best thing to do. It's best to have, a kind of rational post-mortem and inquest into what went wrong. But unfortunately, that's not what parties tend to do. They tend to want to solve their immediate problem, which is, of course, Rishi Sunak stepping down and therefore creating a vacuum.
I mean, the sort of febrile atmosphere within the party would suggest that they aren't going to have a period of breathing in and out before they make any decisions, are they?
No, it doesn't look like it. You already saw actually during the election campaign people essentially manoeuvring to declare their candidacies for the leadership contest. There was a sort of parallel leadership contest going on at the same time as the election campaign. I think it's fairly obvious who will stand. It will be Kemi Badenoch, it will be Priti Patel, probably James Cleverly might throw his hat into the ring, possibly Suella Braverman as well. But I think it will be quite difficult unless they can engineer some kind of coronation, if you like, of a more centrist, more moderate MP, which is unlikely, I think, that they will have to go out to the membership. And of course, this is a party membership which is ideologically and demographically very, very unrepresentative of the British people as a whole, and therefore are likely to choose a leader that pleases them rather than pleases the electorate.
And you mentioned there a moderate centrist. Is Tom Tugendhat that man, or an example of that person? And might he still step forward?
Yes, I mean, he, I think, will step forward. I think James Cleverly might well step forward as well. They might be seen as kind of safer pairs of hands, if you like. But I think it will be difficult, as I say, with that membership, to get themselves even perhaps into the final two, let alone actually to be the person who is selected by that membership.
I mean, I remember watching in disbelief as Labour, going back some years now, as Labour voted Jeremy Corbyn in as leader, you know, for good or ill. I don't know, people will think what they think about him, but I remember just thinking, surely they don't think that is a way to win an election, that choice. And then we know what flowed from that. But in a sense, if the Conservatives embrace reform, embrace Farage, give a political home, not just to him and them, but to their millions of voters, whilst there is some wisdom in that potentially, all history says it won't win them an election.
No, I mean, generally speaking, elections in this country, because of our first past the post system, are won on the centre ground, as you quite rightly stress. Sometimes it's possible. I mean, you can argue that in some ways Margaret Thatcher won from the right in 1979, but actually she was nowhere near as right-wing as some of the people who will be going for the leadership this time around.
And I'm interested to note that you hesitated about whether Suella Braverman was an inevitable candidate for leadership.
Yeah, I think many of her colleagues regard her as just too out there, if you like, just too much. And I think, you know, they think maybe Kemi Badenoch or Priti Patel is a rather safer option. I think Suella Braverman tends to shoot from the hip, as we've already heard just now. And I think, you know, her resignation, some of her behaviour in government, I think will put off some of her colleagues. But who knows?
And has Priti Patel been quietly working on this? Because she's naturally, having lost a high-profile in government, she, you know, inevitably you go quieter on the media stage. But has she been working, below the radar on this? Within the party
Well,
itself, I mean.
yeah, I mean, I think she is popular with activists. I think she does quite a lot of events. She's also actually quite popular with her colleagues as well, because she is very much a people person, and that's not unimportant in these contests. I mean, you can look at the Labour contest, for example, when you had two Miliband brothers, one who was better with people than the other. One might have been better electorally, but they picked the people person, and that might well be the case when it comes at least to the MPs stage of the voting.
Priti Patel also proved to be fairly effective in the media, didn't she? But also at the dispatch box.
Yes, she did. I mean, she has a certain, way of working, and it does appeal to, many Conservative voters. Whether, of course, it will appeal to the electorate as a whole, and this comes back to your main point, is what Conservative members want the same as what, to use the jargon, the median voter wants, the voter in the middle, and I'm not so sure that that's the case. If you look at the breakdown of the vote for the Conservatives that's come out of this Lord Ashcroft polling that we've just seen today, it looks as if it's still made up very much of older people, and of course they are, not to put too fine a point on it, a wasting asset.
That's a terrible thing. Excuse me, Tim. That's a terrible thing to say. A wasting asset. Brutal.
Sometimes you
Brutal.
just have to say it as it is, right?
I know what you mean. I think in radio terms, I haven't heard it for a long time, but we used to call older listeners coffin dodgers, which is dreadful.
Yeah, well, I certainly wouldn't use that phrase.
No, but there you go. That's what I used to hear in various local radio stations. It was not nice. Anyway, we'll step aside from that one. Will the Conservative Party change how it elects its leaders? Because left to their own devices, the membership, I think, want Nigel Farage, don't they?
Well, it is in the Constitution that you have to have this two-stage process where the MPs present the membership with two names and then the membership decides. Now, there is a way of avoiding that, and that is some sort of coronation, which the Conservatives have managed before. Of course, that's the way that Rishi Sunak managed to grab the crown. That's not necessarily a great precedent. Also true of Michael Howard when he won in 2003. But again, he lost an election in 2005. So it can be done. But I think one problem about cutting out the membership would be you've got a pretty demotivated grassroots at the moment. Selecting the leader is the one thing, along with selecting their candidates, that members get out of being a member of the Conservative Party. If you say to them, well, you did all this hard work at the election, but now we're going to cut you out of the decision, that isn't, I think, going to motivate many people either to stay in the Conservative Party or even to join it.
Rishi Sunak has said he'll stay on as leader as long as he's wanted and needed while this process happens. Are you surprised by that?
No, I mean, I think he will want to, in some senses, go against the common wisdom, which said, as soon as he lost, he'd be off to California, didn't really kind of care about the party or didn't understand the party. I mean, I think he will do his duty there. I think one thing that will be interesting to see is whether they extend the leadership contest so that it goes to the party conference and at that stage allow the candidates to, as it were, strut their stuff in front of the media and in front of the membership. And that worked very well, for example, for David Cameron in 2005.
That's right.
So it might not be a bad idea to repeat the process this time around.
When he rolled his sleeves up and did it without an auto cue.
Yeah.
And strode around the stage. Yeah.
He did. But I mean, one thing he did do was he was very clear about what the problem the Conservative Party faced, and he was very clear about the solution to it. But of course, that was after the Conservative Party had lost 3 elections in a row. It might take that many elections this time around to come back, although voters are very volatile. Who would have said that the Labour Party would be back in 2024 after the loss that they suffered in 2019.
And it was interesting when Nigel Farage won Clacton overnight. In his speech, he talked as much about coming after Labour as coming after the Conservatives, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He talked a good game there, but I'm not so sure that actually he has much appeal to the people who voted Labour, to be honest. I mean, he probably peeled a few votes away from Labour this time, but I think if you look at Labour's vote, if you look at the demographics, if you look at their values, there aren't many people, I think, who voted Labour this time around who will, see much in Nigel Farage and the options that he is offering them.
But there was a great deal of tactical voting for Labour to get the Tories out, wasn't there? So you've got to wonder about who those people are.
Well, it's true. I mean, tactical voting is the one of the stories of this election, and of
Yeah.
course it worked very much to Labour's advantage, but also to the Liberal Democrats' advantage. And we talk an awful lot about reform, and we did during the campaign. And Nigel Farage is getting a lot of airtime once again. But one of the biggest achievements here is the Liberal Democrats. To go from just a few MPs to 71 MPs is a monumental achievement, really.
What did you put that down to? Was the sort of the supposedly silly stunt visibility tactic a part of that, do you think?
I think it was part of that, but it was also just a general reaction against the Conservative Party in those so-called blue wall seats. I think there were a lot of fairly well-heeled, well-educated voters who just had turned against the Conservative Party, partly because they just thought that they couldn't organise the proverbial party in a brewery, and they also, I think, felt very let down over Partygate, and regarded the Conservatives as no longer a particularly moral party, if you like, and I think that is a problem for the Conservatives. Their brand is now really quite toxic with those people, and it's going to be quite difficult to get them back. I mean, I think the Lib Dems obviously are assiduous local campaigners as well,
Yeah.
and that certainly helped.